Hello, I'm Will from Dash, and today we will learn the most important thing in programming, which are the conditionals. So without further ado, let's get started. Conditionals are very important because they will give life to our program. So let's take a look at why we need conditionals, then we will discuss syntax and the statements, and then we use this knowledge to improve our chatbot. So let's take a look at the code from the last lecture, links here if you want to see that. So let me run here. Hello, what's your name? My name is Will. Nice to meet you. What's your age? At this stage, no matter what answer I give to this chatbot, the next phrase will always be the same. So if I say 40, well, you're 40 years old. If I repeat the process and say like 300, it will say, well, you are 300 years old. So if we say a number that's higher than 100, of course we are lying. So let's teach our chatbot to say you are lying if the answer is above 100 years old, okay? And for that we'll need conditionals. So whenever we want to run a code given a condition, then we have to use one of the conditionals. So if statement is the most used one, so let's take a look at that first. So the syntax looks like this: if space, then the condition, colon, and then the code we want to execute if this condition is true. Okay, so let's focus on this line first. So this condition must be an expression that results in true or false. So let's type 2 is greater than 1. Because this is true, Python says true. Okay, 1 is less than 2, Python says true. 1 is equal, and when we want to compare the values, so we have to use two equal signs, because Python knows that for one equal sign we are assigning this value to a variable, for example. So example is a equals 3, then we use one equal sign for storing the number 3 inside the variable a. If we want to compare the value, then we say a equals 3. And because a equals 3, so 3 equals 3 is true. Okay? So 2 equals to compare the value, and 1 to store this data in the variable. Okay? Okay, so let's try to make an if statement. So if 2 is greater than 1, colon, and then the block that we want to run. So if we press enter, we have 3 dots, which is Python waiting because it wants more code to execute. So then we have to indent our code. Indentation is just the space that we add on the lines for Python to understand that this is the code that we want to execute. Okay, so let's add 2 spaces and then print the code we want to run. Then we press enter, and Python is waiting for the next line, the 3 dots here. So if we used 2 spaces before, we have to use 2 spaces now. Okay? Okay, so let's try again. Something. And then these 2 lines are the indented block of code. Okay? We can use 4 spaces, we can use tabs, but they all need to be the same indentation level. So if I use 2 spaces in the first line, I have to use 2 spaces in all of the lines on the code, the block I want to execute. Okay? So if I don't want to insert more lines of code, then I press enter, and Python will run this indented block if the condition here is true. So 2 is greater than 1, then Python says, prints the ASD that I typed here, okay? And if the condition was false, so 0 is greater than 1, I can say this won't run. So I press enter and nothing happens because this condition is false, okay? Right, so if this condition is false, nothing will happen. But what if we want to run another code instead? So this is where we can use the else statement. So if 0 is greater than 1, then we print this won't run, press enter, and now we can use the else statement. So else colon, and then the same, the indented block that we want to execute. So I used tab, let me keep using tab. Okay, so let me print this will run instead. Okay, so if I press enter, I can insert more lines of code. So we are in the else block, and now I don't want to insert more lines of code, then I can press enter. And Python will execute the else block because 0 is not greater than 1. Okay? Right. So let's use these concepts to improve our chatbot. So let me exit and open the chatbot.py. Okay, so here in this line, we receive the age from the user. And then we can use the if statement. So if age is greater than 100, then we can print you are lying. And then if the age is another age, we can use the else and say the phrase that we used to answer. So while you are something years old. Okay, so let's try to run that and see what happens. So let's say Will, nice to meet you, Will, what's your age? And I say 300. So we have an error here. The greater sign is not supported between instance of str or string and int. So what's the problem we have here? 100 is an int, a number, and age is a string because the user typed 300 and it's a text, a string. So to compare these values, we have to convert the string to numbers instead. So let's try to do that. So we can do that by typing int, using the int function. So int, open parens, and then the value that we want to convert to int. So input is the text that the user inputs. So doing this, input is inside the int function, and this will convert and then store the number version of the input to the variable age. So now we have in the expression age, which is a number, and 100, which is a number. And then we will see how that works. So Will, and let's say 300, and it says you are lying. And if I run again, and let's say 40, then whoa, you're 40 years old. In this way, we can identify if the user is lying or make a specific answer to the user of a specific age. Okay, so now it's your turn to improve the chatbot. So let me know in the comments what you did with the if and else statements in your chatbot. For this lecture, this is it. I hope you learned something. If you did, please help me by liking the video and subscribing to receive the next lectures. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.